Not too bad. All right, so almost 3 years after the first Dune movie, we now get Dune Part 2. And my theater experience for Dune Part 2 was actually pretty good. I was a little skeptical going into it, though, because it was going to be a packed house. And the last time I'd been to a movie that was really crowded was probably Thanksgiving, which was not a great experience, to say the least. I mean, there was people in front of me talking like halfway through the movie, people behind me screaming at them. But, I mean, Thanksgiving's a little bit of a younger crowd. So going into Dune Part 2, I was a little nervous, but also I had to remind myself, okay, people are paying $20-something to see this in Imax. They're going to be invested. They're going to watch the movie. They're going to be just all in. You know what I mean? And I am happy to say they were. My crowd was definitely quiet. So it was a good experience. So I got a good, just immersive experience with basically no distractions at all. Didn't even have to pee throughout the entire runtime of the movie, being like 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm impressed with my boomer ass for sure with that. So Dune Part 2 has a slightly higher budget than the first movie, about $30 million more. And the plot of Dune Part 2 goes a little something like this. Paul Atreides unites with Chani and the Fremen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. All right, now next, let's get into some of the good, some of the mixed, and some of the bad with Dune Part 2. And first, I want to start off by talking about some of the good. Now, I'm not a huge follower of Denis Villeneuve's work or anything like that. I haven't seen Sicario. I actually haven't even seen Arrival, but I did see Blade Runner, and I enjoyed some aspects of Blade Runner for sure. There were some things I really, really loved. The visuals, the characters, some of the writing and things like that. But there were times with Blade Runner that it felt a little bit lifeless to me, like they were relying way too much, and there was way too much of a focus on the visuals and just the world, which, don't get me wrong, is amazing. It's an incredible world and an incredible lore, just everything that goes into that. But still, a little bit lifeless at times, and I think that was reflected a little bit with the popularity of the movie in a way. But I'm happy to say with Dune Part 2, I think Denis did a really good job kind of balancing just the massiveness and the scope of this world with also having these intimate moments where you're building these characters, building these relationships, and also incorporating the political aspects of it. So it gets you just like, you're very invested on seeing the massive scale and these big battle sequences and just the giant sandworms and all those sequences, but also he does a good job just with those more, like I said, smaller, intimate moments, and that was balanced pretty well. Now, I do wish in Dune Part 2 we got a little bit more action and a little less politics and stuff like that, but the action we do get in this movie is incredible. It is so damn good, especially obviously in IMAX where it really shines, but it's just really good. The fight sequences, the explosions, the massive scale of these battles and that kind of stuff. It's just really, really enjoyable and was definitely one of those moments in the movie. I was like, oh man, this is why I love movies. I mean, another positive I have to mention is the cast in Dune Part 2. I mean, the cast in this movie, the budget's huge, of course, so the cast is stacked from top to bottom. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, who's been killing it lately. It was also cool to see Christopher Walken making a little comeback there and doing some things in a big budget movie like this. But the cast, I think just overall, they're not going to disappoint you in this movie. If you're just kind of thinking these are big name actors who, you know, might kind of like fizzle out a little bit in this movie, no, they do what they do and they come and they bring it in this movie for sure. So you're going to be satisfied as far as the actors and the casting go in this movie, definitely. Now, I will say that although this isn't Hans Zimmer's best work, it's not his most memorable work in my opinion, the music in this movie and the score in this movie is still really, really damn good, especially in those combat sequences. It just really hits. Even in the more like smaller, intimate moments where things are a little bit more slow, the score is still great. It's still just like a little bit undertoned and just easy to take in and easy to listen into. But overall, it just vibes really well with the movie, blends in, doesn't really stand out. So if you like that in your score for your movies, something that doesn't really take the forefront and lets the movie kind of do the talking, then you'll probably really enjoy it. But overall, Hans Zimmer definitely brings it in this movie. It's really, really good, even though it's not probably his best work, in my opinion. And the next positive that I want to talk about, I have to mention my IMAX experience. I know I talked a second ago just about the theater experience and the crowd, But IMAX for this type of a movie, this is what IMAX is essentially made for. This is a spectacle, giant adventure, massive scale movie with big sound, big visuals. If you can afford it, go see this movie in IMAX. If you're into that kind of thing, the IMAX experience, the visuals of this movie are incredible. No, it's not on the kind of same level as like Avatar per se, as far as the brightness and the different like intricacies of what you're seeing on screen. Because yes, there is a lot of desert with not a lot of things happening in that desert, but still the scale and the music and the characters and the outfits that they're wearing, everything blends in so well, especially on that IMAX big screen. And my IMAX experience visually and with the sound and everything going on, really, really damn good in this movie. So highly recommend seeing this movie in IMAX if you can. And just to talk about IMAX a little bit more, I mean, all of the sandworm moments in this movie essentially are incredible. When they're riding on the sandworms, if you've seen the trailer, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And in the first movie, you're like, okay, are we going to get more of that? What's going to happen? How are they going to display that? And I'm happy to say all the sandworm moments essentially were incredible. One moment in particular towards kind of the first half of the movie, you're just like hanging on to your seat. It almost feels like in your seat, the sand is hitting you. You're getting it in your eyes, but you're just watching a movie. And it's just incredible, the visuals and just like the intensity of those moments. And the sandworms are just really damn cool. I know it feels very similar to a lot of different movies with this whole worm under the sand thing. Yes, I know, but still incredible. I'm not saying that Dune ripped that off from anybody. It's just, it's kind of been done before, but still, it's incredible in Dune and looks so damn good. All right, and the last positive that I want to mention is I really like the direction that they're going at the end of this movie. Not to spoil anything too much or anything like that, but there is going to be a whole new fresh take kind of on this world, and the entire direction that they're going with the story at the end definitely makes me want to see the next movie for sure, because there's just going to be some new fresh things added into the movie. So I really like that final direction they decided to go with the movie. I don't know how it kind of ebbs and flows with the book. I've only read the first book. I don't know like how much it goes into the second book or, how much this veers off or whatnot. But as far as the movie goes, I like the direction we're heading at the end of the second movie. And things are about to get interesting for sure. All right, next, let's get into some of the mixed for me for Dune Part 2. And I want to start off first by talking about Timothée Chalamet for a second. Now, Timothée Chalamet, great actor. He's been doing a ton of stuff. You guys have obviously seen him all over basically every movie nowadays. He was just in Wonka. I really enjoyed how he portrayed that character and really enjoyed that movie overall. And in this movie, Timothée Chalamet does do a really good job, but there are moments where I'm kind of sitting back and saying, okay, in this scene and that scene, he's incredible and does such a good job and fits so well with that character. But there's also other scenes and other moments where I'm like, is Timothée Chalamet the right person for this role? I don't know. Because there's a sequence where it's like, do I believe that in the future he could potentially be this like menacing big leader force in in this IP, in this universe? Could he be that type of a character? There's some moments in this movie where he kind of like raises his voice, gets like kind of aggressive at times. And you're also like, but it's Timothée Chalamet. He can't even grow a beard. He looks, kind of small. I know he's kind of tall, looks like, but he's kind of a little guy. Nothing against that, but still, for this type of a role, there's just some moments where I'm kind of like, he's perfect for this role. And then there's also moments, like I mentioned, where I'm just kind of like, was he the right casting? That has nothing to do with his acting skills. It just has to do with kind of how he looks, how he comes across on screen, his size, his stature, that kind of a thing. But overall, yes, he does an incredible job in this movie, but I just wanted to mention that as kind of a mixed for me. Another something that I would mention in the mixed category for me is at times in this movie, I do kind of find myself not caring all that much about the bloodline stuff and about the politics of the movie. And that is a huge part of the movie. I mean, you could argue that is the meat and potatoes of the movie to an extent. But there are times where I just, I am invested in the bloodline stuff and the politics of it all. But there are also times where I kind of just find myself not caring all that much, and I just want more spectacle and more combat and more big things happening and less of that. So I enjoy it at times, but sometimes I don't. So, that's kind of the definition of mixed for me. So that's why I would mention it there in mixed. Also, does anyone else kind of find it funny that in this whole world and this whole universe, with all this wealth and all this technology, they still find so many reasons to fight each other with swords and knives in battle? I get it if it's like a display of entertainment, you know, a gladiator type of scenario. I get that. But when you're like in a life and death scenario and people are trying to take what you have or you're trying to take what they have, wouldn't you just use the best shit you've got? There's so many moments though where they're just like, nah, nukes or, you know, giant, you know, mosquito planes. Nah, we'll put those to the side. Let me use this knife that I used to cut open my Amazon packages for instead, you know? And the last thing that I want to mention in the mixed category for me is that although, like I said, the acting and the cast in this movie is incredible, there is a little something missing in this cast and the acting for me on screen in comparison to the first movie. There's a little bit of charisma and kind of just humor there that's missing for me personally that we got in the first movie from people like Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa. Now, I know what happened to them, but still, I feel like there's just that little bit missing there when you compare it to the first movie. Now, I am a fan of Javier Bardem, and I think he does a good job in kind of the funny guy role and in his role just in general, but there is a little something missing there. I think his character and just his ability is good, but not great. Whereas people like Jason Momoa or Oscar Isaac just have a little bit of an extra kind of level they can take it to, in my opinion, just for me, just personal preference. So I thought, especially in comparison to the first Dune movie compared to the second one, there was a little something there missing with the cast. All right, now let's get into some of the bad with Dune 2 for me. And now, towards the end of the movie, there's a pretty important fight sequence that to me, I felt like was a little bit of a letdown. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. You might have not thought it was a letdown, but to me, I thought it was. I thought it was a little bit quick. I thought it was a little bit predictable. And I thought the way the end of it went down, I was like, oh, you could have done better than that. We've seen that so many times, but just a little bit of a letdown for me. All right, another negative that I want to mention is I find myself not caring at all about the character arc or just the direction of Rebecca Ferguson's character. What's happened to her character, what she's currently going through, what's just her character's status and where she's heading and what her role is going to be in this entire thing. I kind of just find myself like, I don't really care. I want more sandworm stuff. I want more battles. Enough of that shit. It's getting too weird for me. Enough with that. So kind of sucks because she is a great actress. I love what she does, but just the way her character is, I'm just like, ugh. Enough. And just to kind of touch a little bit more on that subject, this movie has a lot of like witchcrafty, shaman-y kind of stuff, which is probably not even a word, but I'm not a Dune lore fanatic. I don't know that much about the lore. I read the first book, but still, give me a break. But the witchcrafty, weird stuff, there's just times in this movie where it just gets a little bit weird for me and isn't really necessarily my cup of tea. It almost kind of feels like at the end of Interstellar, you know? Love Interstellar, and I still love the end. But, you know, everybody has to admit it gets a little weird there at the end. And this movie has some of those moments, not to that extent, not that confusing and that scientific, but there's moments which I did expect going into this movie, especially from the trailers and the story and just reading the first book. But there's moments in this movie where it gets a little too weird. And it's kind of like, I don't think most people next to me care about this stuff that much. Are you guys kind of bored? Are you bored? I'm kind of bored. Can we get into some more action, please? I'm watching this movie in IMAX. I want some more explosions. Call me shallow, but in Dune, I, just want more of that and a little bit less of that witchcrafty, weird stuff with dreams and weird shit. The dream stuff actually is kind of cool at times, but just some of that stuff. Can we just trim that down a little bit and give me a little bit more of what I want in the next movie? And the last negative that I want to mention is the movie at times is pretty predictable. There's a lot of moments where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of the expected that was going to happen. That was kind of expected. That was kind of expected. Yes, there's a big story twist in the movie for sure, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. Some of the greatest movies like this, these big spectacle movies with some things going on like this, have some twists in them that just kind of make you jump out of your seat and say, holy shit, they had the balls to do that. And this movie has a little bit of that, but I wish there was a little bit more. It's a bit predictable at times for me. All right, and here are my final thoughts on Dune Part 2. So going into this movie, I kind of say to myself, I'll be satisfied with this movie if we get great visuals, some things that maybe I'd never seen before, a great Hans Zimmer score, some pretty damn cool action sequences, and I'll be good with that. And I'm happy to say that, yes, we do get that in this movie. Now, I don't think this movie is a classic or anything that I'll go back and rewatch a ton or anything like that. But this movie is very good, very enjoyable. There's a lot of that spectacle. The visuals, like I already mentioned a little bit, are incredible in this movie. The combat scenes are incredible. Wish we would have gotten more combat scenes, though, like I said a second ago. But it's very, very big. The scale is massive. The spectacle is there for sure. And we also get enough meat on the bone with the story and the other things that it doesn't just feel like empty calories throughout the movie. So there's enough there for sure, along with the spectacle, which I'm very, very happy to say. All right, everybody, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed my review of Dune Part 2. If you're new to my channel, I mainly cover horror stuff and scary stuff on this channel, but occasionally I do dip my toe into more mainstream stuff. So if you're into that kind of thing, then make sure you subscribe. Go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me if you want more content from me right now. But anyways, everybody, go watch Dune Part 2 in theaters, especially in IMAX if you can. You'll have a good time. But anyways, I will talk to you all in the next one.